You were supposed to.
You clap. Don't you?
Oh
clap?
yes, I'm good. I fucked up.
No, you can keep recording.
No. Start over. It's a fallacy.
Okay. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Republic Reacts.
I'm Nayib. This is Bakes. We be reacting.
Let's
see what's going on in the world today in the internet.
I wanted to say thank you to everyone for all the support on our previous videos, the likes, the subscribes. It means so much to us. It's helping us grow the channel and bring you better content. So
you guys have been amazing.
So
you guys, we know there's a long road ahead, but thanks for being loyal.
Thanks for being loyal. It's only gonna get better.
Better,
So this week we are reacting to how the world's most dangerous country solved its murder problem.
Oh, a murder!
And the country in question is El Salvador.
El Salvador always on some bad.
El Salvador, some backstory. El Salvador is controlled by MS-13 and
what's MS-13?
They're one of the biggest gangs in the world.
I've heard about that shit.
Yeah,
on like these gang videos, I've heard about MS-13.
They're about their business. They are deep cartel vibes. They don't play. They beheading. They doing all that shit, blood. So MS-13 about their business. So let's lock in. Let's get it.
The beginning of the rise didn't look like the beginning of a rise. Not far from the tiny country of El Salvador's capital city, San Salvador, is a smaller city, Santa Tecla. And not far outside of Santa Tecla is the tiny coffee town of Nuevo Cuscatlán. It was here in 2012 where 2,754 voters put their faith in a young, business-savvy political newcomer for mayor, defeating the Conservative Party opposition by the slimmest of margins, just 169 votes. But such a narrow margin didn't dim the young Nayib Bukele's ambition. Bukele's campaign from the very beginning focused less on party lines and more on purpose. A confident, energetic 30-year-old bent on snuffing out crime and corruption and investing in education, infrastructure, and community development. Upon taking office, Bukele announced he'd forfeit his salary so could instead help fund a scholarship program. In that year, Nuevo Cuscatlán's illiteracy rate stood at about 15%. With the launch of a citywide reading program, Salvadoran press celebrated that in 2015, the city was free of illiteracy, making it the third town in the department to reach the mark and moving it well ahead of the national average. Was that while he was in office, Nuevo Cuscatlán only saw a single homicide. While the exact number was disputed, the exceptionally low homicide rate was a major point of pride, as the country has been fighting the violent and entrenched MS-13 and Barrio 18 gangs since the end of its civil war in 1992.
Okay, so give me a short intro into that, the MS-13. Like what is their like shtick?
So they're one of the biggest South American gangs. They go across all major South American countries. They go up to Mexico and everything, and they are very powerful and very feared. The reason MS-13 is so feared is because MS-13 rule with extreme violence. They do is, no? They don't fuck around. They control the government. If the government try to come and take one of theirs, they shoot the government.
Are they like big on drugs and shit like that?
Drugs, extortion, prostitution, anything. MS-13 don't fuck around.
MS-13?
hyper-violent and incredibly cruel gangs since Bukele was a teenager, so no matter how relatively safe the small town was to begin with, in a country with a legacy of gang violence, such a safety record was as much an accomplishment as education for the young mayor. The other successes of Bukele's office were more tangible. At the end of 2012, the city opened its first 24/7 medical clinic. Moving fast and not worried about how the city would pay for things, ground broke on a new library, and the city embarked on a multi-million-dollar water project that would make drinking water available 24 hours a day rather than the meager 3 hours available previously. In 3 years,
Statement.
Whoa!
You had 3 hours of water,
Whoa!
24 hours.
There is a water project to give us means of water for 24 hours a day. How crazy is that?
Bro, they only had water for 3 hours a day. He brought the homicide rate down in that city down to 1. For his entire 3 years, there was 1 homicide a year.
Yo, that's insane.
And this is the place where gangs
What's
run
his
the
name?
show.
Mukeles, come.
Yes.
You're this side, Mukeles.
We'll
Come
see.
and help us, You need some of that.
perhaps the YouTube channel would. Here he posted clips of his interviews and debates that aired over local television. But he didn't stop at just getting his message out. He used the platform to further an image of a man firmly for the people, posting videos of him moving through the town, talking with kids, celebrating the launch of the medical center, and answering questions from the community. The brand building wasn't confined to the internet either. On everything that the mayor touched, the library, the hospital, the signs at city limits and construction sites alike, and the podiums from which he spoke, was now a light blue N, which replaced the city's prior logo and highlighted the positive transformations directly connected to Nayib Bukele's term. The project worked. He remade the city, and in doing so, built a personal image as a
Just to note, anything that he touched, he put his logo on, which is that light blue in. So everywhere you saw a school with a light blue in, it was in your face. So as far as branding went, brilliant.
It's like a McDonald's sign.
Yes, as far literally, he created a brand. He was no longer a politician, he was a brand. Like Donald Trump is a brand.
Yeah.
You know the brand and you think the brand is good. You don't need to know a lot about the guy, but you know the brand. So
Yeah,
your kids had a school and the school has an in. Your kids never had running water before. Y'all got running water and the tap has an in on it.
We all chopping ins and all.
We love the in.
We love the in.
Good. Definitely.
Branding is a great marketing tool as well.
No, and he was in charge of his political party's brand and the publicity and stuff like. He was in charge of that, and then he decided, "Why don't I get into politics?"
While San Salvador dwarfs Nuevo Cuscatlán, Bukele took a similar approach. He built a new library, reinvigorated old shopping markets, invested in infrastructure, spent serious money, and signed off on glitzy vanity projects to ensure his image rose along with the city's. Salvadorans followed, and his popularity continued to rise. Nationally, though, other trends were on the rise in equal proportion. By the time Bukele took office, a truce between MS-13, Barrio 18, and the national government had recently collapsed. In 2 years, homicide rates had more than doubled, and by 2015, the country was seeing an average of 18 homicides a day, while its 103 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants had ballooned to the world's worst rate. At the very same time, the nation's prisons were beginning to overflow as the federal government leaned back.
The fact that they are first Jamaica's first, I like Jamaica's on some smoke
Yeah.
when it comes to those. Yeah, people die every second in Jamaica.
Before he took office, they were first in homicides per 100,000 people in the world. In the world. And this is how bad the situation in that country was, that MS-13 and the other biggest gang in the country had a peace treaty with the government. As long as the government gave them comfortable living in prison and stuff like that, they wouldn't have wars and death on the street. That was the agreement with the government. As long as you don't bother us, we won't bother you.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, that should tell you how powerful a criminal organization is, where the government has to make a peace treaty with them. So they were in deep, they were rooted in the community.
Into heavy-handed gang policies that threw more and more gang-affiliated Salvadorans behind bars. From 2010 to 2016, the country's total prison population grew by more than 11,000, while the incarceration rate hit 579, far outpacing any other Central American country and nearing the top of the list globally. While Nayib Bukele's name recognition was expanding and image as a big idea reformer was sharpening, the country was crumbling. Gangs killed dispassionately, while the government arrested citizens indiscriminately. Salvadorans were nothing short of desperate for change, as the threat of gang violence now impacted every aspect of everyday life. old politicians and old policies just weren't enough anymore. A lane emerged. For decades, El Salvador's politics effectively ran as a two-party system. It was FMLN or it was ARENA. No serious candidate would even consider running for high office without aligning themselves with one of the two. But despite surging popularity, Bukele's support from FMLN, his party was waning as he constantly broke rank and strayed from their platform, so in response, he was failing to get the votes of his own party members for some of his mayoral ambitions. They became the barrier to his goals. This quickly devolved into a vicious cycle of one criticizing the other and vice versa, before finally, Bukele gave them an excuse to get rid of him. FMLN officials alleged that he called their lawyer a bruja, a derogatory term that roughly translates to witch. This, and its violation of their ethics policies, was the reason given for his expulsion from FMLN, but all understood that it was heavily—
And porra.
Yeah.
Or porra. I've heard that in Brazil, porra is like, basically it can mean like yes, or it can mean like vagina or like bitch or whatever.
Yes.
Like that. It's like porra. It could be like
And basically, what was happening here was, so in that country, there's only two major parties, that FMNL and then that blue party. So since they got independence and they became a democracy, one of the president was chosen from one of those two parties every year. So in order to get anywhere in this country, you had to run with those two parties. But like any party that's been around for years, porra, it means semen come. Oh wow.
Oh shit. Oh yeah, how come as well?
Okay.
It's like one of those versatile words, like you
Is
know,
it like puss?
It's like puss or like jas. Like jas can be bad or it can be good.
good.
It's one of those words that like weirdly enough people take those negative words and they turn it into like positive words.
Yeah,
and
your
negative
mouth
words,
is
like neutral words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's gonna escalate.
Wanting to form his own party, but unable to in time for the upcoming election, Bukele teamed up with the Grande Alianza para la Unidad Nacional, meaning his incredibly long-shot presidential run could begin. Bukele, meanwhile, argued that the system itself was the problem. He promised to gut the establishment and its corruption, largely delivering this message through Facebook and Twitter, attaining skyrocketing engagement with each. His few physical campaign events more closely resembled parties as he hosted dressed like a Silicon Valley CEO, not a suited presidential candidate. As election day neared, the polls trended increasingly towards his direction, and so confident in his position, he didn't even show up to the debates, unwilling to even engage with the mainstream political candidacy system. It may have been risky, but it worked.
This bro moving mad. He didn't even show up to the presidential
Was
debates.
this Newgan Galvaris?
Yes. This nigga was so confident he didn't show up to the debates, blood. This nigga was like, you know what, fuck it.
I think
I'm not
maybe
gonna pull
because he
up.
had that base level of popularity with like
Yeah.
with his following, I think maybe.
And he was
was,
literally just advertising on Twitter and on Facebook, blood.
I
He
mean
was
that's
running.
what that's got Twitter and Facebook is gonna reach, bro.
But no, everyone else is on the radio, they doing rallies. This nigga like, fuck that, I'm chilling,
Who
blood.
fucking listens to radio?
Who listens to the radio,
Come on,
blood?
bro. You're gonna compare radio to like social media. Social media is gonna.
But no, interactions is
destroy you,
all
bro.
it's about,
Yeah.
blood. The little boys are watching it, the grandmas are watching
You
it, blood.
post that, post about podcast videos. You in,
You're
blood.
in, blood.
You're president.
You with a cat? Oh my god.
You are the president of that country. You'll do it immediately.
100%. You making money.
We should start a political party. We should
Not a
start
chance.
Why not?
We will get assassinated.
You think you would?
We would 100% get
I haven't heard
assassinated.
of any assassinations wherever we from. Like I haven't heard.
Ah, yeah. In Mpumalanga, they be assassinating ANC
Yo,
members.
it's just-
Oh, they be assassinating ANC members whole day, blood. Yeah.
Boom.
They be assassinating lawyers and shit like that. South Africa's not a country.
Oh, yeah,
where
I know that.
if you don't got chest and if you don't got fire security, don't be pulling up, blood.
Yeah,
If you coming with gang reform, you're looking for trouble. You're looking
yeah.
for trouble. Don't fuck with them
You cracking
gangs.
down on gang violence, but I'm
Ah.
cracking down on you.
The FMLN candidate attained 14.4% of the vote, the ARENA won 31.7%, and Nayib Bukele, the 37-year-old outsider, commanded 53.1%. Such a decisive victory that the almost inevitable runoff wasn't even necessary. On June 1st, 2019, Bukele assumed office and became the 43rd president of the Republic of El Salvador. Change came quick. In the days that followed, Bukele unveiled his so-called territorial control plan. The plan that would transform El Salvador from one of the most dangerous countries in the world to one where people could simply go outside without fear. It reportedly had 6 phases, with a 7th to be implemented only if the rest didn't work. Each phase was only unveiled at its start, but the first started just 20 days into his presidency and was dubbed Preparation. It comprised a surge of police and military into 12 of the country's most dangerous communities, ones that were effectively gang-held territory, along with initiating a state of emergency in the nation's prisons, prohibiting visitors and calls so that incarcerated gang leaders could no longer communicate. Essentially, the idea was to just start, to use the resources on hand to do.
Wow.
Yeah. 20 days in.
But that's smart though. You can tell them the flow of information coming in and out of prison. And prison is like a stronghold for most gang-related activities. So I think that was a good play.
That was a good play, but I will be the devil advocate throughout these interactions. Do the prisoners not have rights to communicate with their families?
I mean, there are some prisoners that can like get the brunt of that, even though they aren't like gang affiliated.
So is it fair to
the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? When you're fighting like gang violence and the war on drugs, bro, you can't really play fair.
So throughout this video, I'm gonna keep pushing that line. I'm gonna keep asking you where you draw the line, because we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
You know, we'll see where he drew the line.
And now I'm staring at Bukele.
You're standing with Bukele still.
Yeah.
Do what they could to start to fracture gang structures. The next phase was opportunity. Perhaps as a way to foster public support before the more heavy-handed phases to come, this second step involved using a $91 million loan from the Central American Bank for Economic Integration to invest in community centers, skate parks, schools, and other services that would work to prevent young people from joining gangs in the first place. But phase 3 was where things got tricky. The name was modernization, and the idea was to buy the country's national security forces some $109 million in equipment. Drones, helicopters, guns, everything they'd need to fight an all-out war with the gangs. The only roadblock to implementing this was that the $109 million loan, again from the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, would have to be approved by the country's Legislative Assembly. The Legislative Assembly, however, was formed by an election in March 2018, almost a year before Bukele's election, long before he could influence an outcome. Therefore, the Legacy Arena and FMLN parties held 53 of the 84 seats, a firm majority, while Bukele's adoptive party, Ghana, had just 10. Essentially, in order to do anything, including get this $109 million loan, the president had to appeal to the lawmakers from the two parties he had just convinced the entire country were the problem in his campaign. Unsurprisingly, the parties pushed back.
That's kind of conflicting.
No, but that's every country. Like our country has a parliament. So our parliament has, so the main party will have the most seats in parliament. So the amount of votes you win determines how many seats you get in parliament. You see, so ANC will have more than half. The DA will then have. Look, everyone knows where we're from, right? we know. The DA.
We are actually from Uzbekistan.
The DA will then have 20%.
Yeah.
The EFF are now rising, so they'll have another maybe 5%, 10%. You know, then all the other ones will maybe get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats. You know, so that's why you to get certain votes, to get certain laws made, you have to go through Parliament, and Parliament they need to vote. So it's not just your party that won, they can't just be making decisions straight up. That way it keeps the country fair. And it prevents dictators. And it prevents people from moving mad, because there must be opposition. If there's no opposition, that's a dictatorship.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there gotta be some ops.
So at the moment,
I wonder Parliament's so crazy sometimes.
do you see what Parliament turns up?
Yo, like it gets hot in there.
Exactly, and it gets hot because of the amount of seats. Who know, but other parties will be like, okay, now the ANC want to implement, let's say for instance, a stop and search policy, nah? If they want their party to look like they care about crime, they'll slide with the ANC. So the ANC and Keegan's National Party are voting to stop crime. Vote us in next time.
Absolutely.
The ANC is trash, we better, but we see this.
We trying to win some public votes.
Do you see?
We live with the public opinion. Like
Yes, so if the public wants something, a party will slide with it, because if they don't slide with it, their voters might be upset.
Yeah,
they
might seem like they're against whatever the crime was.
And then in that, sometimes you make coalitions where you combine your party's seats, and then you will now maybe vote against a majority. So currently, the EFF, a few other political parties in our country, yes, they are trying to form a coalition to usurp the ANC.
Yeah, you know, I've heard that term, not coalition. Like, look, I'll be frank. I don't know. Like, I don't have the greatest like knowledge when it comes to like politics and shit like that. But I've heard that term a couple of times. I always wondered what the fuck they doing in my coalition.
Yeah, so it's like when your parties join, you aren't joining your parties, you just agree to vote together on this thing.
Oh,
You just have a common purpose here. We don't fuck with each other anywhere else but here.
Me, you, Chloe decided to make our own civil parties, and now because we essentially want to usurp the ANC, we go and form a coalition with the parties that are trying to do that. And because we have so much numbers, do you think we'll be able to usurp in that way?
100%. That's currently the strategy that's being used. The only thing that's stopping the coalition is the fact that the DA and the EFF can't agree on the terms of the coalition.
Oh, I see.
You see, if the DA and the EFF agree, the NC is gone.
But the EFF move mad as well.
Yes, you see now the DA don't agree with that, and the EFF call the DA racist.
Yeah.
So
I feel like they're all a bunch of children sometimes.
they
as
are
well,
all
you
a
know?
bunch of children, but at the same time, if those two parties agree, then the ANC is gone.
Yeah.
You see,
You think it'll happen?
what's gonna happen?
You think it's gonna happen?
What's gonna happen? Because one of them want power.
It makes me nervous, you know.
But
asking for more transparency on where funds would go, leaving the loan and phase 3 of Bukele's crucial territorial control plan deadlocked. This is where things got iffy. Supposedly, the president invoked one of the powers granted to him by the Constitution, Article 167, Part 7, which allowed the office holder to convene an extraordinary session of the Legislative Assembly when, quote, the interests of the Republic demand it. While vague, many questioned whether the lack of approval of a loan constituted an extraordinary situation worthy of an emergency legislative session. While lawmakers squabbled over whether this was a legal maneuver and therefore whether they would attend the Sunday session, Bukele pushed back, saying it was their constitutional requirement and threatening them by publicly reminding everyone of Article 87. Article 87 of the Constitution states that people have the right to mount an insurrection if lawmakers fail to follow the Constitution, and therefore, Bukele implicitly asked his supporters to come to the Legislative Assembly prepared to overthrow the government. So they did, surrounding the building, but ultimately only 20 of 84.
A coup d'etat.
a coup
A coup d'etat, bro. That's insane.
He didn't get his way, and he instructed his majority support to pull up and overthrow the government if these people didn't show up for this vote.
Wow, that's crazy.
If they didn't do exactly what he wanted, overthrow them and be reminded that Bukele controls the military.
You gotta commend him because, like, look, he has a dream, and bro is pushy. Like, he's convinced, even though it might be a bit crazy. Like, he's going for it, bro. He's making the push.
Let's see.
Lawmakers showed up, far from the minimum needed to legally vote on legislation. Regardless, Bukele arrived, and not alone. Marching into the chamber with him were dozens of police and military personnel donned in military fatigues and armed with rifles. While they surrounded lawmakers, Bukele delivered a brief 10-minute speech demanding a return to what he considered constitutional order, furious that the majority of lawmakers disobeyed his dubious order. Now, the key question was what this event actually was. Was it Bukele bringing in the army and police essentially as props? Visual devices to convey the importance of passing the legislation that would better equip them? Or was it a show of force, an implicit threat? A reminder to lawmakers that the guys with the guns were on his side, which they very much were, given the $109 million he was about to give them. While this series of events was quickly considered a constitutional crisis and critiqued the world over, distraction came quick as the COVID-19 virus reached El Salvador's borders. On March 21st, the president announced a mandatory nationwide lockdown with violators subject to detainment in special pandemic containment centers. Almost immediately, potential legal issues arose. Some 70 people were arrested in the early hours of March 22nd before the details of the president's decree were even published. That is, arrested for violation of a law that wasn't even officially publicized. Others were arrested for not wearing masks, despite not yet being legally required, others still for traveling to jobs deemed essential by the decree itself. It was a constitutionally dubious law to begin with, but even then it was applied arbitrarily and with problematically generous interpretation. In a matter of weeks, the Supreme Court struck the decree down.
So basically, you know how every country had essential workers that had to, so doctors, medical staff, food grocery workers, people at like supermarkets and stuff. So they were allowed to travel, right? In his country, you would get arrested, a doctor traveling to the hospital to go and help the people with the COVID.
Why did he fucking switch up like this? Why did he switch up like this? He was doing so fucking well. hell? Why did he switch up like this? Bro, like he lost the fucking plot, bro. Jesus.
My brother went 360 blood.
Bonkers.
And bear in mind, all of these people were arrested before the law was made. So you're getting arrested for a law that doesn't exist.
Bukele.
Imagine that.
Bukele.
Imagine leaving your house and getting arrested for a law that does not exist.
You know, I think maybe he was a bit like sour, or maybe he still had like a chip on his shoulder because of the past. Like, I feel like he maybe took it as an L, that whole gathering, like when he was like 20,000 people, 20 people that came
Out of the 80 years.
out of the 80 that needed to vote. And I feel like he was now, you know, when people get like drunk with power and they're like not trying to like fucking, like go like protest behavior.
Yes.
When you try to like fucking make voice here, like, hey, blah, blah, you get arrested, all shit like that. I think that's what happened now. That's a hallmark of a bad leader, I think.
Good or bad?
Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. All the time.
Every time.
Communist is great, but the only problem is the power's gotta like pyramid up to somewhere, and almost 100% of the time, it goes wrong that way.
It goes
Yeah,
wrong.
it goes
and
wrong.
and that essentially is what happened. What's happening here. But
Oh, they are a communist country, aren't they?
no, they aren't. They're a democratic
Are they
country.
Oh shit. Which one is it? Is it Colombia?
No, Cuba.
That's
Cuba was
Cuba.
communist.
It's
They
Cuba.
were
They
communist.
were.
And that's how Che Guevara became a dictator.
Yeah. Oh shit. But I know there's a couple that are still.
The communists. And they are
they're
unlike
like one or
what is
two,
now
I think.
dictators.
Yeah, bro. Like,
Because
it
essentially-
never goes well, bro. For the communists, look, we get it. We understand. You know, it's fair and shit like that. And like, it gets rid of the whole like the rich get richer and the poor gets
Yeah.
poorer kind of thing. But like now, everyone's like level, but someone on top there is just like he's taking it all.
He's deciding what level is.
Yeah, that kid goes to the head all the time, bro.
So, let's watch.
saying that detainment without due process could only happen in response to a suspicion that a person might be infected, not simply for violation of the lockdown order. Of course, Bukele pushed back, building a loophole, saying that those found in violation of the lockdown would not be held for violation of the order itself, but rather under suspicion that they might be infected because they violated lockdown orders. Put another way, the Supreme Court made a ruling, then Bukele and the police just decided to ignore it. This storyline continued in 2021. On February 28th, the country voted in a new legislative assembly, and Nuevas Ideas, the new party founded by the president, decisively swept. This was no surprise. Through this all, Bukele was incredibly popular. Opinion polling hovered around 90% approval rating, making him one of, if not the most popular president in the world. His popularity translated to his party winning 56 of 84 seats. That's to say, they alone held a majority. No longer would Bukele have to face the opposition of the majority of the Legislative Assembly. No longer would he need to concede to
Can we see where this is going?
I see where this is going.
You still Team Bukele?
Yo, like the thing is, yo. The thing is, like, I always bring it back to the Hitler situation. The thing is, it's very easy to get swayed by these politicians. Like, as you can see, the minute, like, once it, like, it gathers steam, do you know what I mean? It kind of like it rises until a point where, like, it gets crazy and then the shit starts dropping. By that time, it's already too late. Do you know what I mean? They give them so much power until the point where they're like, oh, pussy, we weren't supposed to do that. It's too late. They got the power already now. You know what I mean?
And that's like Hitler's the perfect example, because Hitler came in to save Germany at a time when Germany was at its lowest.
Yeah.
Germans they had no army. They were suffering. They were paying reparations to everyone, and Hitler was coming. We're giving you jobs. We're giving our country back our pride.
Yeah.
He's the savior, and the savior very often gets a lot of leeway because of all the good that he's done.
Yeah.
All the ends all around the city.
Yeah.
Reminds you.
All
oh, no,
dubs. They're all dubs. So
They're all dubs, you know. You may have done this, but you know in the past he's done so much good, so maybe he's got a plan.
Yeah, but he's gonna play.
Hail Hydra. I almost did the salute.
And you know what? The common problem was like the gang violence.
And
shit.
the poverty.
It's always a big problem.
This niggas had water for 3 hours.
Oh, that's bad, bro. That's bad.
He gave them 24-hour water. It's a big plus, blood.
Yeah.
You can drink water whenever you want to.
Do you think the worse the situation is, the more like kind of like gap there is for someone like this to fill it?
100%, and especially clearly this is a poor country. Because if they had water for 3 hours, they're clearly not rich.
Yeah.
And
Not
you,
doing well,
the
bro.
easiest people to prey on is the poor.
Yeah.
Because the poor require very little to be happy. The poor want basic standards of living.
Hence why churches work so well.
That's why churches work so well. The churches don't prey on the rich. Churches prey on the poor.
Yeah.
So when you target the poor, and the poor is always the majority in every country.
Yeah, that's true.
Correction.
That's true. Yeah.
Wrong churches, not all.
Okay,
churches.
okay. Shout out, my
we
niggas.
say,
Shout out, my niggas.
Shout out.
You
Yo.
know?
And like, yes, bro. That and they kind of preying on hope in that way, because that's like their biggest weapon. Like, they give you hope that things are gonna change for the better. Blah 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 blah. But then they'll take advantage of that, and once they get that power, they now going the wrong way. You came a long way, but you went the wrong way. Yeah.
And think about it, if you seeing your friends, your family getting gunned down in the street, there's nothing you can do. This gang decides that no one is leaving their house for the next 2 weeks. If you're outside, you're dead. That's what this gang decides. If you're outside, you're dead. So he's doing something about these gangs, but at what cost?
My question to you is, let's say me and you, we lived in El Salvador. Would you be for this? But like, okay, like obviously hindsight is 2020 always. But let's say before the fact, before we knew, like, it would get a bit crazy. Would you be for this, dude?
I'm 3,000% for him.
No.
Because everything he's doing is what you want from a politician. You want action. You want this nigga to move now. You don't want this thing to be coming 5-10 years down the line. You want change now.
So
3 hours of water, 24 hours of water. That's the shit.
No,
I'm
bro, I
looking
can
for.
shower.
Bro, you can drink water anytime. You don't need to ration of water. Like, trip on that. Water.
That's crazy.
So you had me, blood.
Yeah, you'd have me as well. I'd be first in line. I'd be same like with the ANC kind of thing.
Yeah.
Look, if we think about it really, this is what could happen if ANC does get overthrown. And fucking the Dhaka party comes along, and now next thing we know, you know what I mean? We're getting arrested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own agendas.
Yeah, but that's actually scary how that works.
Scary.
FMLA and Arena wishes. So just one major roadblock remained: the Supreme Court itself. Thanks to the new Nuevos Ideas majority, though, all it took was a vote. The president said the body was making arbitrary rulings that were impeding his ability to manage the pandemic, the national legislature voted to dismiss the 5 dissenting judges, and Bukele filled the bench with 5 new ones that would vote as he wished. Bukele now, by proxy, held all 3 branches of power: executive, legislative, and judicial, and with that he could do, well, just about anything he wanted. El Salvador's weekend of March 25th
The chancellor has been born.
Bro,
The chancellor of
he
El Salvador.
controls Congress, the people that vote in the laws. Then he controls the highest judicial body in the country, the only people that can outvote everyone else. If that 5 judges decide this is not, again, with our constitution, they are overruled now.
Yeah.
Now. You're gone. You're gone now. So they weren't, so firstly, Congress wasn't rocking with him. Y'all gone. Then the last people that could overthrow him at any, because even in our country, the president can do what he wants. If the Supreme Court decide it's unconstitutional, you're gone, blood.
Yeah, you're gone. You're done, bro.
You're gone. It's out. There's no further conversation. They are the final vote. You can't go higher than the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court is the highest ruling part, the highest judicial. So he controls all 3 major parts of the government.
And the military as well.
Yeah.
He's got the guys
So
too.
he's got he's got all forms of politics. He's got the military and he's got the people. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
through 27th, 2022 was tragic. Nobody's exactly sure why, but the gangs were mad. Many speculate in response to the breakdown of a secret truce between them and the government, special treatment in jail in exchange for relative peace on the streets. Whatever it was, some 87 seemingly random people were murdered, and Bukele was furious. Years of slow and steady progress, a small early sign of success of his territorial control plan, were reversed.
Over one weekend, the gangs decided they quit because the sacred truce with the government got broken down. So in one weekend, they walked outside and they gunned down 87 random people.
Jesus.
Not
Christ.
connected to the gang, women, children, anyone. If they saw you, it was on sight, you were dead. Because their truce with the government that allowed them to have these certain privileges, allowed them to control territories. Because that was broken by Bukele, they went outside and they killed 87 random people on the weekend. Mothers, fathers, children, grandfathers, daughters, they slayed them in the streets.
Yeah.
No reason.
That's
Not you pissed him off anything, you were here.
That's South America for you.
You were
Like, have you
young.
watched Narcos, bro?
Bro.
The murders
That
and shit,
yo,
bro.
the Jews should have had a couple of gangs up in fucking Germany. They should have had a couple of fucking Jews. L'chaim, motherfuckers. Bang, bang, bang. What you gonna do now? I'm saying that what they do is right, but
Moving mad.
like they're moving mad, but at the end of the day, this is Dictator. You know what I mean? Like, things you can do here is limited. You know, you can either just lay down and take it, or I don't know, bro. I mean, look, those people died. It's fucked up, but Jesus.
And now that we're on that point, if based on what you were saying, if I was a Palestinian man, I would have a gang. I might call it Hamas.
Oh, shit! Where's this thing? We didn't need this mic right now. I drop it right here. Good God.
in just one weekend. So he went to the Legislative Assembly and they approved a 30-day so-called state of exception suspending constitutional rights. Police wouldn't have to tell people why they're being arrested, they wouldn't need to read them their rights, detainees wouldn't have a right to legal counsel, and they could be held for up to 15 days without seeing a judge. The state of exception paved the way for mass arbitrary detention. So that's exactly what came quick. Police and military swarmed gang strongholds, arresting any known members, but also arresting anyone who appeared that they could be in a gang. Tattoos, by themselves, were enough to get thrown in jail. Police were reportedly subject to daily arrest quotas and encountered little blowback for false arrests, pushing them to just arrest anyone that they could imagine being a gang member, regardless of facts or evidence. By midnight Sunday of that tragic weekend, some 600 people had been arrested. By the end of the week, 6,000. And now, 1 year on, with the state of exception having been renewed and renewed and renewed, nearly 70,000 suspected gang members have been detained. 2% of the nation's adult population is behind bars, in overcrowded prisons stuffed 3 or 4 times beyond capacity, waiting to make their way through an overburdened judicial system. Mothers and fathers still search in desperation for their arrested children, unable to track them.
So basically, what the law stated was that your constitutional right to have your right, you don't get your rights read to you. They don't need a reason to arrest you. They don't need to tell you why they're arresting you.
Yeah.
You have no right to see a judge in 15 days. They can just throw you away and deal with you whenever they feel like it. Huh?
Yeah.
And that was set initially for 30 days. He extended it for a year.
Yeah.
So for a year, the police and the military could come into your house and drag you out of your house for no reason.
But they probably just need a sign. Like, if you in SA, if you were licensed plate at 2 or 6 or 8 in it,
You're
or
gone.
7, you're gone. You're done. Like,
And to
you're
make
done.
it worse was they had daily quotas of people they had to arrest.
Yeah.
So if they ran out of gang members and they were 40 short, they're grabbing 40 people.
Yeah.
They're grabbing the first 40 they see. They're going
Actually,
to-
they all have like a cholo look about them, so I think they're basically meant for that.
No.
You know what I mean?
And bear in mind, none of these people have to be documented. So you know how you needed an arrest report, usually, and you can tell, okay, Neymar was arrested and was taken to Paro police station. There's none of that. Neymar's arrested. You don't know where Neymar is. You don't know if Neymar's alive.
But at least if I come out, I can still get a job because there's no like,
No.
record of that shit.
No one
Yeah.
is being let out.
Oh, no, it's the, oh, fuck.
Wait,
But,
we're getting
but,
there.
but now, Jay, question. Even though it's wrong, do you think it's kind of dope though? Like if they had to arrest just like people with gang tattoos type thing. Like
Yeah.
if they had to do that here.
But what if you're reform gangs? Because there's many reform gangs. It's like, for example, in our country,
There should be like a
they're
system in
doing
place.
really well. Like
There's no
they're
system.
doing well. You know what I mean?
Nah,
That-
but like if they had to
that-
do this thing where they're just arresting all people with gang tattoos type thing.
But then where's the line?
Gang tattoo.
Gang tattoo.
What
What's
is
a
a
gang
gang
tattoo?
tattoo?
Yeah, what's
So
it?
most,
tiger?
most what
A
is
flower?
that people know.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
people know what a gang chop is.
Yeah, you
It's
got
very
that,
easy
yeah,
to
it's
see,
very
you know what I'm
easy.
saying?
Okay, so
yeah.
now let's say for instance not a gang chappie and you maybe have a teardrop. Is that
No, but that's
Yeah,
far-fetched.
they see.
Like-
you got a teardrop.
Like with the
You go to
MS-13
jail, bro.
people. All the people with MS-13 were getting locked up at some stage.
Yeah.
yes,
So
but
it's like very clear cut.
literally the quota that they needed was a tattoo. That guy had a tattoo of a dragon.
Yo.
He had the other guy had a rose. That guy had a rose.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's
God,
very still
you
very-
can't.
Do you see what I mean? When are you gonna draw that line? But let's continue to watch. You still Team Bukele?
I don't even know. I don't know. Bukele is moving mad. He's moving mad. He's that's the problem with these things. You know, if you want to take drastic action against these things, which is oftentimes what's needed, like the lines are gonna be blurred. But what makes a blur? Like what blurred line is worse than the other blurred lines? You know what I mean? Like, yes, you want to solve a problem, But if you are solving a problem with such by such crazy means, if you're solving the problem, like, is it really bad? Is it too much? If you're giving too little and you don't solve the problem, do you know what I mean by that? Like, you don't really know.
Okay.
It's a trap, bro.
Let's continue.
down in the system even after a year, but increasingly they're being sent here, to the brand new Terrorism Confinement Center. This facility was built at breakneck pace once the gang roundups began, and opened for business in early 2023. It was introduced to the nation through a highly choreographed, scripted, and produced 35-minute video tour with Bukele. Throughout, the video stressed the president's influence on the project, how his logic and smarts created a better system, and exhibited the scale of the security forces, thanks to Bukele, the quality of their equipment, thanks to Bukele, and the ultimate degree of control the government would have, thanks to Bukele. After all, the prison was capable of holding some 40,000 inmates, making it the largest prison in the world, a single facility capable of housing the population of a small country. The thing is, all of this worked. While in March 2022, the country averaged 4.8 homicides a day, a bump upwards over the year's average of 3.1, April, the first full month of the roundups, saw just 1.3. In May, the trend continued, just 0.5 homicides a day.
Okay, so here's that thing I was talking about. Yeah, he took that draw session, there was lines that were blurred, but he addressed the problem. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it was crazy, but do you think
So
that's what needed to be done at the end of the day?
So what is the line?
Bro,
Where do you draw the line? Because imagine you're an innocent man. So my argument to you is, no? You're innocent in this. You had a tattoo of a rose in your neck.
Yeah.
Your family have not been able to contact you for the last year. You are being kept in terrible conditions with actual gang members. You're a law-abiding citizen and you're part of this. You haven't seen a judge. You don't have the right to speak to your family. Because remember that lockdown, so you can't phone. You still can't phone your family.
Yeah.
You haven't had contact with the outside world. You don't have your basic human rights as described by the Human Rights Charter.
Yeah, fucking hell. Oh, bro. That's
Where do you
tricky,
draw the
know?
line?
Like, but don't you look, do you think that once that line is drawn, whatever measures you put in place become less effective? Like, if you're drawing that line, like, yeah, look, you need to draw a line. We all know that. But, like, oftentimes when that line is drawn, like, it can be bent. You know what I mean?
What is your bend curve? So
Like bend curve,
what
like-
is your line in the sense? Something that you can't do.
Okay, let's say this in the case of this, that I suppose you are innocent until proven guilty, you have a right to a fair trial, blah 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 blah, all that good shit. Okay, so let's say that is we're following that line. However, some bro like he guns someone down the street and somehow he gets good lawyers and he manages to get out. You know how the
system works.
How the system works and how these powerful gangs have managed to bend this line over time. And I think that's an obvious problem. Whereas if you blur that line and we raise you now, Keiki, you got a rose tattoo, you gone. Dragon tattoo, you gone. You ain't getting no trial. That man's gone, he can't kill anybody no more. You know what I mean? Maybe 1 out of 5 people are innocent. But 20 people aren't dying in the streets. You know what I mean? And I know what I'm saying is crazy. But, like, what do you think about that? What do you think?
My line is human rights.
Yeah.
Because the reason human rights were put into place, no, were for this exact situation. Because in every system, no, you need a line in the sand. So yes, criminals will exploit that line, no, but good people exploit that line too. Same way billionaire businessmen exploit taxes.
Yeah, that's true.
Stuff like
That's
that.
true.
So just because it's working for one side doesn't mean you can change it. Because if you're changing the laws every time, you're shifting that line in the sand, at what point does it become fair? Because it's a democracy at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
These are the rules we agreed on beforehand. So if you change the rules every time it doesn't suit you, is that really law and order? Or is that a dictatorship?
Yeah, but I think it's a dictatorship. But I think dictatorships are good for certain things, but overall they're pretty bad. I think.
Let's watch. Let's see how it goes.
In fact, since April 2022, not a single month encountered an average daily homicide count over 1. While some question the exact validity of the data, the broad truth is undeniable. El Salvador is as safe as it's been in decades. For the first time in many residents' lifetimes, people can actually walk the streets, actually live life without fear. The feeling is freeing, life-changing. After decades of hopelessness, it's like living in a new nation, one with a better, brighter future. Bukele is as popular as he's ever been. The checks and balances of power may have been degraded, the judicial system may have broken down, thousands may be unjustly detained, but in the opinion of the vast majority of Salvadorans, the ends justify the means. Polling shows Bukele's approval rating still around 90%, making him...
Okay, so, considering the conversation we just had,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to look at this kind of situation, like the El Salvador situation. And what I'll say is, and it may be a brave statement, look, if the situation is that bad, I think oftentimes what it takes to get it to a place where it's reasonable, it's gonna take some mad cock. And I think, look, I don't know how truthful those numbers are.
Because obviously he controls them.
He controls the numbers, true. But I mean, like, let's say, for example, let's go under the assumption that those numbers are somewhat correct. You know what I mean? And he's gotten the situation to a livable situation. I think, look, in a country where things aren't that bad, that won't work. That won't work. Extreme measures won't work. But when the country is in such a bad place, bro, and people are getting killed left, right, and center, and gangs are so powerful, I think I'll be with Bukele in this one, that you're gonna have to do some stupid madcock to even get it to a decent place. Otherwise, look, I won't get there. Especially, I think it all depends on how bad the starting place is. If the starting place is push bad, then I think this is what's needed. If the starting place isn't that bad, like they say in our country, yeah, like it's not that bad. It's bad, like it's bad everywhere else. But like, you know what I mean? I think it's not.
Western Cape is the capital of the world.
Yes,
The
it is.
capital of the world.
Yes, it is, and that's bad. Yeah, that's bad. But it's not El Salvador.
But
It's not
No.
Jamaica. No.
Compare it to like our apartheid era though.
Yeah.
To get clean from
Yes.
apartheid.
What did
Imagine that
yes,
happened.
what had to happen to take us from apartheid to now? A lot of mad shit, a lot of killings, a lot of bad things had to happen. And I think depending on how bad the starting point is, they'll show you the extreme measures you need to take. Like I was saying, like we're on Jamaica, for example. So let's say
We're just as bad.
Oh, do you think? Okay, I don't
The
know,
Western
man. Like,
Cape
give
is
me a
just
bad
as bad.
country. Give me a bad country.
We are the bad country.
Mexico or some shit.
We are the bad
We don't have
country.
cartels, dog.
We don't. That's what makes it bad. We don't even have a recognizable entity as responsible for this.
Yo,
We are the worst case scenario.
Okay, look.
We kill women at an unprecedented rate.
that's-
We kill
But
men.
like, we're not Zimbabwe.
Guys,
Guys,
we
come
are.
on. No.
Zimbabwe is
So
saying.
you don't love
Guys, Zimbabwe is saying they on South Africa.
Yo, so you okay. Yes.
No, but the thing is not, these are suburbs boys
Yeah.
talking
Yeah,
about
we
the
are
crime
suburbs boys.
situation.
Yeah.
They don't need to leave their door and get robbed every day.
Yeah. I got robbed a couple of times.
I have.
Yeah,
Now imagine when the person robbing you lives next door.
Yo. Okay, listen.
Okay, look.
No,
Let's
okay,
finish the
wait,
video
before-
and then we can
before we go. Okay, let's give Bakes some options. Okay, you have a choice of place to live. Okay, where we live right now, Zim, Mexico, or El Salvador. Choose one. Bro.
Run that South Africa thing.
Run it, bro.
Run that
Exactly
thing,
what I'm
bro.
saying. So I'm saying, yo, like that wouldn't work here. It would be fucked up here. It wouldn't work here. But in the case of El Salvador, they needed something drastic.
Okay, let's watch.
I mean, like I said, I don't know how they did it. I don't know where this brother. I don't even know if he's in power still today.
Still, perhaps the most popular president in the world. Elsewhere, however, his image is different. Bukele has been condemned by just about anyone in the business of condemning. The United Nations, Human Rights Watch, the US State Department, international media. Very few come to his support globally. All express concern for the backsliding from democracy. El Salvador is 9 months away from its next presidential elections, and Bukele has announced he's running. This is despite what Article 152 of the country's constitution reads. Quote, "The following shall not be candidates for the President of the Republic. He who has filled the presidency of the Republic for more than 6 months, consecutive or not, during the period immediately prior to or within the last 6 months prior to the beginning of the presidential period." This line was always interpreted to mean that one could not be president for 2 consecutive terms. Until 2021, when the newly overhauled Bukele-appointed Supreme Court reversed course, saying that consecutive terms would be allowed. Little legal justification was given, only that denying a second term to a popular president would be denying the will of the people. This is true. The people want Bukele to remain in power. He has seemingly solved the nation's biggest issue in a way that the people are supportive of. He's done the job he was democratically elected to do. Across every step in the process, he has retained the support of the people, even as he consolidated power across all 3 branches of government. He now has few, if any, legal checks on his power, considering he's able to modify or reinterpret the Constitution as he pleases. He is essentially a democratically elected dictator. Possible, even common, that checks and balances in a democratic system get in the way of progress. They make things slow, but they also make things methodical. It's through this process that decisions are properly vetted. It's a system of government designed to depend on the system itself rather than any particular individual. So it's a system of government that makes short-term sacrifices for the long-term gain. El Salvador, meanwhile, has flipped that on its head. It's putting all of its eggs in one basket and making long-term sacrifices for short-term gain. Maybe the people are right. Maybe it's a sacrifice worth making to solve the #1 issue holding the nation back. Or maybe the international observers are right. Maybe their outside perspective is valuable and the country truly is making a colossal mistake. But what's sure is that if it is a mistake, it's their mistake to make. As a sovereign nation, the Salvadoran people have the right to decide on their own, without international meddling, what they want to do, even if that means the democratic election of a dictator. The accessibility of smartphones these days has changed a lot, but one interesting thing I think
Wow, you know what? I fucking love that guy. I love that because A is still in power and B, like I always tell you guys, there's a coin. It's 2 sides of a coin, bro. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he's a dictator, but yes, he solved the problem. And there was major sacrifices. And like, view from the outside is, dictators are bad. They're bad.
Yes.
Whatever, they're bad.
Yes.
Like, all our previous experiences with dictators are, we don't want them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, bro came in, yes, he did, man, God. But he solved the problem. And my question to you is, do you think that they solved that problem with what they had before? Or with what he brought in now? Do you think they'll still solve that problem?
I think that the way he chose to solve the problem is exactly what that guy said. It is short. They sacrifice long-term gain for short-term gain.
Yeah.
So yes, his system works short-term, but so now all the criminals are in jail. That 30 days of no arresting, no needing to explain to her, till today is still in place.
Wow, that's crazy.
They still have their quota of people they must arrest. They have a country's worth of criminals locked up in the world's biggest prison.
Yeah.
They still need to lock people up because they still have their daily quota.
Yeah.
They still don't need to put you through the judicial system. They still don't need to do any of those things. He literally changed the constitution to allow him to become president more.
Yeah.
He controls the media, therefore he controls that public opinion rating.
Yeah.
He controls
That problem.
everything. He can change any law he wants. And at what point, it's the same thing like the ANC. The ANC did well to get us through this period. But now someone else needs to...
Let us know if you want us to start a political party.
Okay,
And if you guys would support that.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's been fucking lit. It's been a long one. You know, we got in, I got heated. This is what happens here, boys. This is what happens here. It's real talk, real conversations. You hear it here. You hear it nowhere else.